The only spiritual path that ever existed, the only true spiritual practice that ever was, the only gospel or scripture that should ever have been promulgated is love one another. All right, so as you may have gathered, I am not a priest, but I do have a very simple but very important gospel to preach, and that's part of the reason why I've adopted this garb. And you might say, oh God, not another gospel, there's so many of them. This is actually just bringing it all back to its bare essentials and really preaching to you what people who dress like this, who hold themselves out in this fashion, should have been telling you all along. So what is it? The only spiritual path that ever existed, the only true spiritual practice that ever was, the only gospel or scripture that should ever have been promulgated is love one another. That's it. Love one another. You might say, well, that's kind of obvious, that's kind of simple-minded, but if you think about it and really think about it, that if people gave away all of the practices that waste so much of their time, all of the spiritual striving, all of the prostrations and dedications, the ablutions, the consecrations, all of these things, and just concentrated on loving other people, being kind, generous, hospitable, supportive, friendly, all of those simple things. Can you imagine what the world would actually look like if all of that nonsense was done away with and people were concentrating on what they should have been concentrating all along, which is seeking out the welfare of other people as opposed to their own welfare, seeking to relieve human suffering and to make the world a better place. Love one another as the only spiritual path, scripture, practice has powerful implications both for the people practicing it and for the wider world, because it would improve with every single effort that any one of those people made towards loving, looking after, relieving the suffering of other people. So that's it. Love one another. There is, however, just one other little bit to this particular scripture, injunction, gospel, whatever you want to call it. And it is directed not at the just and the merciful, not at the kind-hearted, the hospitable, the generous people. They're already doing the right thing. They just need to be reminded and encouraged. Love one another. It's fantastic. Keep on going. Don't let anybody put you down. You're doing God's work, you might say. No. The other part of it is dedicated towards those other kinds of people who benefit from all of the nonsense and the jibber-jabber that has been spun around these ordinary people who just wish to do the right thing. You might call them inveiglers. You might call them flim-flam men. I like to call them people who turn around and turn around other people and turn them around and turn them around, securing their love and their devotion and very often their finances, soaking all of that up when it should be pouring out into the world towards other people, soaking all of it up for their own delectation, their own benefit, their own joy, their own satisfaction. Terence McKenna would have called them the rishis and roshis, the geshes, gurus, rinpoches, babajis, mamajis, papajis, the priests and the pastors, the mullahs and the imams, all of these people. There's a second part. So it's love one another, and that goes out to the just and the merciful and the kind. And then the other part of it goes out to these other people. So let's try it, shall we? Let's go. So it says, love one another and shut the up. That's the full version. Love one another and shut the up.